I think we're live. Good. Running late as always. It's great to see everyone. Right, let me just close all this nonsense. So much noise. Oh, I wanted to go live on Cake. Hang on. We're going to try Cake. Cake.can. I'm going to try it. I can only go one or two ways. How do I do this? I really should have checked this before. I spent so long building the profile, I didn't actually check to see how you go live. Oh wait, no, hang on. If I go to, I did see someone create a dashboard, and then nope, that was it. I definitely saw back to the channel. I definitely saw how to do this before earlier. Let's not spend all day doing this. If I don't get on, I don't get on. We'll just string key. Sent me a code. Apparently it sent me a code. My authenticator. Do you know what? Too much hassle. Already not interested. Right. Already not interested. That's the way that goes. We'll just live without it. Not the end of the world. Minimize this. So, I thought maybe we just open up tonight with a wee bit of oh, hang on. Sorry, YouTube. I've done it again. Oops, I did it again. Anyone can be on. I always forget to put you as public. Fool, you fool, you. Right. Save. And it's still saying it's unlisted. It's still saying it's unlisted. Give me 2 seconds. Why is it saying it's unlisted? I shouldn't be allowed near a computer. Right, public. Nope. Public. Oh, helps if you click done. There we go, I've done it again. Could you do the O'Sullivan name, please? I actually have a full video on the O'Sullivans on YouTube, but I will go through names and say, how you doing, Robert? How are we keeping? My grandfather's Irish and Dublin. I can't. Yeah, I'm just gonna. We'll get through surnames shortly. Just gonna run through some little bit of history. Why not? You know, why not? Why don't we just run through a bit of Irish history? Is McCarthy an Irish surname? It is indeed. It's all the way from Munster, from Cork. Well, from Cashel, but they spread all through Munster. So I just wanted to thought maybe we'd have a wee go at Oliver Cromwell, just a wee bit. Hey Kat, how you doing? I was live longer, but I unfortunately I left YouTube as unlisted again. I always forget to change the settings. So I've been live for a little while. Blair's a Scottish surname, although there may be an Irish variation or an Anglicisation of the name. So I thought we'd talk about Ireland's favourite. Hi Sean, how you doing? Favourite person in history, Mr. Oliver Cromwell. He massacred my town, Drogheda. Yeah, that's argumented. There's debated. I think is probably the thing. Although mostly it's agreed on that what happened was unjustified. But there are obviously always two sides to an argument. I'm no way going to be standing here defending Oliver Cromwell to an audience of Irish people or people who have Irish descent. Um, but I do think I have a small caveat in that, in the sense that I do think he's over vilified, if that's such a thing to say. I don't think he's the main bad guy in the story of the Cromwellian invasion of Ireland. That doesn't mean he's the good guy either. I just don't think he's the. I just don't think he's the. What you call? He's not a Star Wars analogy. He's more like Darth Vader than the Emperor. You know. So again, and that's just my interpretation of it, obviously. But I will sort of just go through a few things on him, and we can, either debate that, or we can just crack on to the surnames of families. But I just think we need to have that one bit of a discussion. So, I suppose the topic would be, is the vilification of Oliver Cromwell in Ireland justified? He's one of England's great historical figures, but Cromwell remains a bit of a curse in Ireland, although it was from the work of hi Bogwan, how you doing? It was the works of Thomas Carlyle, actually, in 1845, that kind of reversed Cromwell's infamy of being like this ruthless hypocrite and lacking like moral code in the eyes of many in English history, actually including many of his own contemporaries. And Thomas Carlyle kind of turned it around to one of like sincerity and an intensity of his purest convictions in this like purest revolution, and he's portrayed as like this advocate for like religious plurality and toleration. So it just shows that like some of the work, yeah, but Darth Vader was cool. Darth Vader was cool, and I'm not going to compare. I'm not going to say Cromwell was. Would Cromwell be the reason you find the murders in Mayo and Sligo? Okay, so it's the era of Cromwell, yes, but we could get to this, but to Hell or Connacht was attributed, the saying to Hell or Connacht was attributed to Cromwell, but actually it was the English government, and he actually fought against that policy. So, so it's kind of one of these things that gets assigned to someone in history because it's easier than breaking it down and sort of going, oh, it was these individuals or whatnot. So, and like I say, I'm not defending him or anything like that, but I'm just saying we've got Thomas Carlyle. So at the time he's vilified. Then Thomas Carlyle comes along in 1845, reinvents him, I suppose, or opens up the conversation for him. But then obviously at the same time, like say, you've got the historian Abbott, who like famously compiled Cromwell's letters. And at the start of like his endeavour, he admired Cromwell. The reason he did it was he had a passion for the history of Cromwell. But by the time he'd finished compiling Cromwell's letters, he actually hated him. So again, it shows that he's always sort of split the room. Obviously, I think it goes without saying that the war in Ireland undoubtedly killed thousands, and it adversely impacted countless more. But were Cromwell's actions, which occurred in the midst of the war, departed from or exceeding the accepted laws, practices, and norms of the day? And estimates vary, that many asserting that the death toll ranges from 200,000 to 820,000 perished because of endemic warfare, famine, and disease, in a total population of 1.4 to 2 million. If you ask me, many of these figures seem excessively high, and have no doubt been exaggerated, but the conflict is renowned for its death toll. P.S. I have a cousin, Kate. Can you do, please, Melon? I'll do the whiskey. Let me just we just get past the introduction of the day, and then we can Malin, please. Yeah. And we'll crack on with the surnames that you all know and love. Um, so I think the first point is just to raise is that Oliver Cromwell, Cromwell wasn't his original surname. His family were of Welsh descent, and he's actually descended from the Powers Welsh royal family. So Oliver Cromwell's grandfather was Henry Ap Williams, and they became like the wealthiest landowners in Huntingdonshire, which is near Cambridge. But it was Henry's son, Robert, who would abandon the Welsh name to honour his maternal uncle, Thomas Cromwell, who was the first Earl of Essex. So, but Oliver Cromwell was no devotee. Oh, thanks very much for the gifts. He was no saint, and he says this very early on in his early writings. He was kind of shunned from his hometown of St. Ives, and because he was a bit of a light, a bit of a lad, or a bit of a just getting about and doing all the wrong things. But he eventually reforms himself, finds God, reads the Bible, has an epiphany, and he comes back with this new vigor and religion. Thanks very much for the follow, Becca. And then becomes the Oliver Cromwell we all know and love. But obviously he's. I think the first thing to mention is that this man would rise to the highest position in England, and yet had no very limited political experience and little to no military experience when he joined the military, and yet would achieve so much, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with the outcomes. I get some of the lists here for you. Some of the I did have a load of listed dates here that I wanted to read through, but I think that just now, upon reading them again, I feel like it might just be a bit. We'll just skip past the whole. We can cover the conflicts that led up to why he came to Ireland another day, and just get to the brass tacks. So, why did Cromwell come to Ireland? The war had its roots in the mid-16th century, when the Irish provinces were heavily colonised by English settlers, and throughout the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, the English government was fearful that continental Catholic monarchs would use Ireland as a springboard for invading Ireland, and sought to impose strong Protestant control of Ireland in and after 1610. The largest of the plantation policies, in which not only the Irish landowners but also the tenant farmers and urban elites were displaced, affecting large parts of Ulster. Previous Catholic owners and occupiers were driven into exile, where thousands either became mercenary soldiers known as the Wild Geese in the armies of the Habsburg kings, or fell into destitution. And the first, like I said, the first signs of unrest in Ireland begin with the appointment of Thomas Wentworth, who's the Lord Deputy in Ireland in 1631. And Wentworth becomes unpopular with both Catholics and Protestants because he treated plantation undertakers harshly. He increased their rents, interfering with tenure, and he also increased taxes on exports in a time of real economic hardship. And Charles I promised land reform, and it's called the Graces, which were meant to protect the rights of landowners in Ireland, though they were never actually formally passed in Parliament. And Wentworth also spent time investigating ownership of land and looking for opportunities to seize lands from the crown, for the crown, and large amounts of Catholic-owned land in Connacht was confiscated and declared crown property. And his probably his most unpopular move, however, was his enforcement of the membership of the established Church of Ireland, which was opposed by Catholics and Presbyterians, And Wentworth actually tried to enforce conformity by introducing an oath for all to take, swearing that the king was the head of the church. There obviously are, of course, many other factors, because no rebellion truly has one root cause. And you know, but I think that's definitely one of the powder kegs that sort of started off, because in February in 1641 we have Rory O'More, and he's met and created a plot with Lord Maguire in Dublin, and like sort of persuade him that the Anglo-Scottish conflict that was happening was creating the suitable environment for their own armed resistance in Ireland, and a lot of people don't realise it was actually an Ulster-led plot, and the plot was to capture Dublin Castle, overthrow the Irish government or Parliament, and secure a strong position from which to negotiate with the king. They have had a great distaste for the Irish Parliament, because the Irish Parliament had previously obstructed all attempts by the Irish Lords to establish contact and state their anger around issues such as Catholic religious freedom, protection of their estates, defence of the king's prerogative. So they had sort of hoped, by blocking any intervention by the English Parliament or from Scotland, because Scotland was also impeding, they thought ultimately they would be able to get their grievances to the king. But the plot ultimately failed, which gave rise to an unplanned scenario for everyone involved. So I think one of the sort of myths that sort of go round, not myths, I don't want to say myths, because there is based in a wee bit of truth, but truth is the massacres that sort of happened. So I suppose when the rebellion began in October 1641, the rebels had demanded to create a Catholic Ireland, owing allegiance to the House Stuart. So they still wanted to maintain House Stuart as their monarch, but they no longer wanted to be a dependency of England, effectively forming a type of home rule. And the rebellion obviously almost instantly caused chaos in Ireland, with attacks on Protestant, English and Lowland Scot planters, such as the massacre in Portadown, where I think about 100 people were said to have been killed. But the thing here you have to remember is it was actually not the policy of the leaders of the rebellion to attack settlers. Sir Phelim O'Neill actually issued a proclamation literally on the second day of the revolt, claiming they were not rebelling against the king. They were only defending their own liberties, and anyone who retreated to their own house would not be harmed. And at the same time, Catholics in many parts of the country were organising themselves into county level, organising county level war bands, to defend their regions. And it appears though that Sir Phelim O'Neill and the other leaders of the rebellion had very little control over these. So regional grievances kind of got in the way of the general overarching policy or overarching reason for the conflict. And they began to lose control of the original message of the rebellion, and many, like I said, many used these sort of this disturbance for their own reasons. And most of the conflicts where these massacres happened, or when I say massacres, or these killings happened, were they were local in nature. So, and some of them were just through hatred as well, because like I say, a lot of people had lost a lot of land, and were facing destitution, etc. So, and the rebellion had basically become something more than the leaders originally intended, and this only escalated with the displaced Protestants. When they were being attacked, a lot of them fled to London in large numbers, and they were handing out pamphlets basically exaggerating the scale of the atrocities committed by the Irish. and they were linking them to alleged plots to root out Protestantism in Ireland, and this only really served to harden the attitudes even further, and they'll help to foster like an emphasis of revenge, really. Um, but at the same time, O'Neill is condemning the violent type of behaviour, and he even executed 9 of rebels who murdered some of O'Neill's planter tenants at Kinnard. Um, but the violence, continued for about a year basically until there was sort of a regrouping and the establishment of the Catholic Confederate Association in the late summer 1642. So, but even then, the Confederates only controlled. So the Confederates with O'Neill only controlled the south of Ulster, North Leinster, and they weren't in a position to negotiate with the Dublin government or King Charles I. So, and then obviously they're rebelling. Oh, thanks very much, Mel. Good to see you here. So obviously the rebels have taken South Ulster and North Leinster, trying to gain a foothold where they can sort of levy to put their grievances to King Charles I. And they've obviously got England and Scotland. So the Presbyterian Scottish Covenanters Parliament had said basically it was willing to send forces to Ireland, but only in cooperation with the English Parliament, and it was to be traded. This willingness to join the English Parliament in going across to Ireland to end the rebellion was only guaranteed if land was handed across. So they were only doing it for land. But obviously, I think most people will know that famously that King Charles I was refused control of the newly raised army, and when the issues of finance sort of presented its problems, because the Dublin government's already strained the relationship with like the traditional old English Catholics of the Pale, so these old English families who are still following the Catholic faith, the relationship's strained. It's further undermined by the reluctance by the government to either arm them against the Ulster rebels or to allow them to pursue a political solution via the Irish Parliament. So they're stifling even their loyal Irish or Old English, possibly seen as Irish by them, people from actually doing anything. So, wow, I was not expecting this. What? What were you not expecting, Fionn? But girl, I will get to you. I promise. I will get to them shortly or soon enough. Yeah. So basically, the English Parliament actually pushed a lot of old Catholic families, English families, into the warm embrace of the rebels, because they were cut off from the king and wanted in Dublin. So many influential old English Catholics now began to join the rebels. They couldn't fight them; they weren't allowed to be armed. So, but the whole time, the Confederates are still continuing and asserting their continued loyalty to the king. Phelim O'Neill is repeatedly claiming to be acting by the king's authority, and apparently even displayed a standard bearing the Great Seal of England. I think that, and they also had to swear an oath. So, this is the confusing time that they're in, and even in the oath they're committing to protecting property and rights, and they a desire for equality of religious practices. But unfortunately, even though they're stating all this, the king's still asking the Confederates to surrender, and he's denouncing O'Neill's standard as a forgery. So probably due to pressure from English Puritans and Scottish Presbyterians. But you know, at the time the Confederates are still sort of proclaiming this. Thank you, S. Moman. Thank you, I really appreciate it. Benny Bikes, thanks very much. D. Lynn, thank you very much for the gifts. Your mic's mate had interference. Hang on. That should get rid of it. Thank you, Kat. Appreciate you telling me that. Oh, thank you, Pete Girl again. Thank you. I will get to your Hogan surname. Just, I'm trying to gloss over some of the history. I won't go into all of it tonight, but I'm hoping that I can just we don't just do the surnames. I will do the surnames afterwards, but I want to just make sure that I part some of my historical knowledge to you guys. That's my attempt to sound posh, educated. Thank you, Rico. Thanks, guys. So, Cat Sol, is that microphone a wee bit better? Yeah. So, I'll just crack right into yes, please, thanks. So, I can't even remember what year we're up to. Were we up to? Had I already told about the? I think we're at the start of the actual English Civil War. So, yeah, the Civil War in England actually starts in August 1642, and it meant like the resources that were intended for the Irish invasion were instead diverted towards like the domestic conflict. So they basically had free run of Ireland for a wee while. But in 1643, the king authorised James Fitzthomas Butler, Duke of Ormond, and Ulloch MacRichard Burke, the Marquis of Clanricarde, to meet with the Confederates to hear their grievances issues. And he showed actually some understanding of the discontent at the English Parliament, presuming to legislate for Ireland, but he was unwilling to make any religious concessions or to make changes around Poynings law, which is the laws that have sort of affected a lot of the Gaelic customs, language acts, land owning. Quite a detailed law, quite a bitter one. And it also limited the statute of independence for the Irish Parliament. So he basically said that all the proposed bills by the Irish Parliament had to be approved by the English Parliament first, and he was basically saying he's not going to take that away. And he did give to some concessions to allowing the confiscation, return or reversal of confiscation of Irish owned land, but he would only do it before all the land that had happened before 1625. And he also wanted strict control that he could appoint the offices in Ireland, which obviously was unsatisfactory to the Confederates, and at the same time that what he was agreeing to he wouldn't have actually got it through because the new sort of Protestant planters and settlers in Ireland would never have agreed to those concessions either. So he'd have just placated the Irish to annoy the newer settlers who've come in. So I think he was just playing a bit of a game, if you ask me, but that's politics. But it wouldn't matter anyway, because at the Battle of Naseby in 1645, thanks for the rose, so Calix Ninja. Oh, did Confederates and Royalists fight together in the first half of the war? I don't know of any instances where they fought. Oh, thank you very much for the gift as well. £5 gift on YouTube, Finn. I don't know about fighting together, but I know that they. So Butler, Duke of Ormond, was often making mini truces and deals. Um, so they were often sort of concessions and sort of side deals, and um, yeah, they but actually fighting together. I can't think of any in the first half of the war, especially. It just oh, common sense. Thank you very much. How you doing, common sense? Good to see you. Oh, colourful wings. That's where you find new ones each time. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, like I say, I don't know of any instances where they fought together, but I know that there was lots of mini truces and gaps in fighting um, um, during the conflict, often led by Butler. He would have a he would make his own personal ones as well. Um, uh, so I think I was going on to the Battle of Naseby. Was I? Anyway, we'll just go to the king is defeated in the Battle of Naseby in England in 1645. Um, and the possibility of military assistance from Ireland now appeared to offer Charles his only hope for basically continuing his fight. Um, so he's peeved off the Irish Confederates, and then has lost the Battle of Naseby in the English Civil War, and now is turning to Ireland for assistance. Now, obviously, like I say, there are factions in Ireland. There's the Royalists. There's the Scottish Covenanters up in Ulster, and small parts of Ulster. There's the Confederates, the Irish Confederates. And now we're going into the Civil War, so you've obviously got the parliamentarians as well. But Alexander MacDonald, the third Earl of Antrim, had led Irish troops into Scotland on a small sort of expeditionary scale, so nothing major. So the king obviously is relying on trying to get the Irish to join. So all the things that they'd requested a few years before, he's now saying that he's willing to concede to the Confederate demands. With his, basically with his prospects in England looking really bleak, he had grown desperate enough to sort of pursue this sort of route. So, pesky Normans. There's no more Normans there. I don't know anyone called Norman who was at the fights. So the reasons for Cromwell actually invading, it seems Cromwell actually came to Ireland not to crush Catholicism as is often peddled online, but to crush the royalist threat. Though we should not confuse this with some sort of out and out hatred of the monarchy. Because Cromwell himself even toyed with being king for 2 months before finally actually rejecting the title, and he only did this because of pressure from his officers. But by the end of his reign as Lord Protector, he was actually king all but in name anyway. Excuse me. But he, apart from wanting to crush the royalist threat in Ireland, he also wished to re-establish metropolitan English rule on the island. And he used those pamphlets I spoke about earlier, the misinformation about massacres in Ireland, to by Protestant settlers who had fled to London, to help legitimize his campaign, as any politician would. You know, if anyone out is sort of angry for what Cromwell's doing, he's not doing anything different to anyone else at this time period. And and later, right? Like, name me a politician that's decent. Um, so, like I've said, the narrative of his invasion to rid Ireland of Catholics is erroneous. And if anything, it has roots in made in statements by the clergy. It's actually coming from the clergy. So at the same time, Cromwell's using pamphlets and letters by dispersed Protestant settlers who fled to London, pamphlets exaggerating and over conflating the massacres happening in Ireland. The clergy are in Ireland saying the same thing to the Confederates about how, you know, they just want to get rid of all the Catholics, and you know, basically inflating those sides as well. So everyone's sort of playing towards. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Please, please. Thank you very much. I just read a comment with "please" in the end of it. So, thank you for this page. No, thank you, Common Sense. You are what make this page, so I really do appreciate it. So yeah, everyone's got their own narrative. Everyone's peddling their own pesky agenda. Where have we heard that before? Yeah, basically in 1649, in March, he's offered the Oliver Cromwell's offered the command of the army for the conquest of Ireland by the Parliament. And he states that his enemies are Papists, the King's Party, but he does say something to the long effect of, I can't quote word for word, but it's he can't say it's all the Papists, but it's the greater part of them. So he's not saying he hate all Catholics, but most of them are bad, but not all of them. But his actual hatred, he hated the Catholic clergy. That's one thing that is true. He hates the Catholic Church, but he hang on. Do you know how or why the Ironsides or Roundheads were so well equipped? I know both Royalists and Parliamentarians both had trained London bands, which were like Home Guard for. Actually, both sides were well equipped. There wasn't really a side that wasn't well equipped. The Irish are being funded by the church. They're having large sums of money thrown in. Scotland is obviously drawing on its own forces. The Royalists are are primarily led by the nobility, so they're drawing on they're borrowing a lot, but they're, that's what nobility does, with the hopes of regaining it back. So, they've got estates to sort of levy against that. So, and the Roundheads are funded by a mixture of things, but again, they're borrowing as well. So obviously I'll get to the point in a minute about how they were able to raise the army, but it effectively comes around. Breeze, thank you very much. Quantum Healing, it comes on to promises. Same alone, they're promising, they promise land. I will get on to that along my bullet points, and hopefully that'll answer a bit more of the question for you. So yeah, what bullet point was that to? Hated clergy. Yeah, so he hated the Catholic Church, and like I say, but again, he's seeing at the same time the Catholic clergy are spreading disinformation, uh, fake news amongst the Irish about how Cromwell's only there to eradicate um, the the Catholicism from Ireland, although he's never made such a statement. Um, um, and they're also claiming that he's going to massacre all the Catholics. So again, he's not even landed there. How can they? And to be fair, they've got nothing to base this off so far, since his exploits in England and Scotland have shown no signs of any of the um, uh, possibility of a massacre. So it's all coming from not nowhere. Obviously, it's coming from based on the treatment of the Irish by successive English governments and monarchies, but at the same time, as an individual, to highlight Cromwell as going to do these things, it's it's based on nothing at that point. And actually, Cromwell spends a lot of time like denying the charges. And this is the thing when it comes to he actually says that no Catholic is required to attend Protestant worship, um, and he says that where he had the ability to stop mass, it would be banned, but he would not like dictate people's consciences in Ireland, and he did not ban any forms of Catholic worship apart from mass. Though he says where he could, he would ban mass, but any other forms of Catholic worship, he wouldn't ban it. And he basically says, look to your own consciences, in faith. If you want to keep, your idolatrous worshipping, fine. To you going to hell, not me. Um, uh, and he never pressured anyone to convert either. He had no. He had no. He wished for people to convert, but he had no. He never put anything in place to force it, like Wentworth earlier in the early 1640s. Um, so again, he's totally doing the opposite of what the clergy are saying to the Confederates. And I think like 40 or 50 of Cromwell's letters survive from Ireland, and like half of them are like addressed to like friends or um, his contemporaries in Parliament, whether they were friends or of another party. Um, uh, and The others are in Ireland. So he's writing, half his letters go to Ireland, half his letters go to England. And he only actually refers to like Catholics like 3 times. Um, uh, but he's really strongly wording against he's obviously very. We have to distinguish. This is the point where we have to, in the talks, like I said, we have to distinguish between Catholic, or from Cromwell's point of view, a Catholic and clergy. He does not see them as the same thing. Um, so he's differentiating between the two of them. And I know a lot of people who would do the same even today. Well, I do actually. Where do I have it? So, yeah. And it's also got Presbyterian. Yeah, because he also didn't like the Presbyterian faith either. Or Presbyterian clergy. He held very similar views as the Presbyterians as he did as Catholics. Although I think I've got it on the next slide, a quote by him, which I'll go over in a second. So, because both sides are sort of preaching rebellion. And he accuses the Presbyterians of clergy of being arrogant and prideful. So yeah, and like I said, his sort of part of his big distrust of the clergy of Ireland, the Catholic clergy, is he knows that they're funding the Confederates. They're sending large quantity of arms, military supplies, and a very large sum of money to the Confederates. So it means that they're having more of a say within the Confederates politics than I suppose he would wish. Um, yeah, he actually says that of O'Neill's 7,000 troops, the eldest sons of the Church of Rome, the Roman clergy, are working to bring supplies from foreign parts. End quote. But he also adds the rest of the army consists of Old English, Irish, some Protestants, some Papists. So basically, in that sort of conclusion, he's actually summing up a royalist party, a royalist army, not a Catholic one. Oh yeah, here's the famous quote, and that might have something about Fionn if you're saying it's funny how he hated Presbyterians yet Puritans were also Calvinists. To get an insight into his views, he had a saying of the Irish people, and he says he would rather be overrun by a Cavalier's interests than a Scottish one, and he would rather be overrun by a Scottish interest than an Irish one. So I think it's showing a bit of anti-Irish sentiment there. he's saying we're the bottom of the ladder, followed by the Scottish, followed by he even though he hates the Royalists and the Cavaliers, he likes them more than the Scottish and the Irish. So that's probably where his hatred for Presbyterians comes from. It's probably more to do with hating the Scots, or not hating. No, well, he just sees them at a lower level than them. Hazel Eyes, thank you very much. Ginger Mom, thank you very much for those gifts. I really do appreciate that. I definitely feel there's some anti-Irish sentiments. That's been at the centre of English politics in Ireland since 1187. And I think his education would have been influenced by Gerald Campensius, since a lot of Gerald of Wales, who wrote a rather horrible book on the Irish history, that was propagandist at best, had taken a bit of a revival during the Elizabethan era. So it's quite possibly that he was influenced by some of these teachings in some form or other. With the attitudes of obviously wanting to re-establish an English metropolitan rule over Ireland again. So what was so I think he's basically a very early form of a proto-British nationalist in a sense. It's like God's given right to rule. Like it's England's. I wouldn't say English nationalist because it brings connotations of actual English nationalists now, but let's say a British nationalist in the sense that he believes the English should own the Isles. But it's that's just for you to get an idea. It's not actually the view I'm trying to put across. Just to help you encompass that idea. I like how you say English metropolitan rule instead of broadly, and it says saying British. I mean, it's British history, but the British don't exist in the sense of how we would think of them today. And I think you have to be kind of careful how you word it. And even after I've sort of said that sentence, I'm kind of trying to figure out just a way that I don't allow people to have this mentality that when I'm speaking of Oliver Cromwell and his actions, that it's justified to start saying British rule or British. These are different time periods. These are different people, and I wouldn't want to say anything that's going to fuel people's attitudes towards modern people or modern political views based on the actions of those before. So, so like I say, it's a different time period, different attitudes, different ideas of nationality, identity, and they're not a continuation. So, and even when I say Irish, it's a descriptive term. It's like I say, their idea wouldn't really sort of resonate too much. Although I will say for the time period, the Confederates, their attitudes and their grievances and what they were requesting were definitely more advanced at the time. Their view was more advanced at the time than anyone else on these isles at that time period. Religious freedom being the one, but Oliver Cromwell at the same time has shown almost very similar attitudes. So you could say he is on the other spectrum of that, on the other side of the fence, surely. But he has quite modernising attitudes for that time period, and I guess that's why both sides are viewed the way they are today. Both as genocidal and massacring, the Confederates on one side and the Cromwell on the other, and actually it's more to do with their contemporaries being ignorant. The way I see English Civil War is urban versus rural. I suppose I wouldn't know enough about the nature of actual England at the time to be able to state how. Ginger Mom, thank you very much for the confetti. I really do appreciate that. Boot Girl again. Zana Zabrosa, thank you very much. Bob BW Joy Marie. Here's Lies. I think I already thanked you, but there was two there, so I'll say it again. Thank you. I will get to the names soon, but we're nearly there. He's just about to set up for Ireland. So I wouldn't know enough about the demographics of the English sort of side of it to say. But could that be because a lot of the landed gentry are obviously their workforce and their armies are coming from their estates, so which is mostly in rural England. But then again, I'm pretty sure the sources that state that brother fought brother. So I think any more information on Monkey? I'll we'll go for it later, Padre. I just want to finish the talk first, and then but I will make sure there's time set aside for surnames. I promise. He was a war criminal in Ireland. I mean, in what sense? If you're using that argument, then everyone was a war criminal in that time period. I mean, that's the whole point, is that he didn't do anything outside the norms. He doesn't promise, chat. He's lying. Stitches, go away. How do I ban this guy? Yeah. So. Yeah. So. Like I say, yeah, I'll get back into. So his for the time period, he's actually quite forward thinking compared to many of his contemporaries across Europe and within Britain and Ireland. And like I say, he's got quite modernist views like that, like his rivals and enemies, the Irish Confederates. And that's why I believe he's vilified to this extent he is by many. Not only for the actions of Drogheda and Wexford, but even then, it's how much of a part to play did he actually have? It's I've just shared your life with Queenie. Queen of Scots, have fun with that. Oh God. This isn't an Irish chat. How dare you bring? This isn't an Irish chat. How dare you bring Cromwell up? Well, he's part of our history. I think it's only fair that he gets mentioned and talked about. Sure, she'll watch it. And whether you dislike him or hate him, as I stated at the very beginning of the video, I think he is actually, although maybe a villain in the Irish story, in our history, he's not actually the villain. For that time period, I believe there were far worse people that had a far greater impact on Ireland and the trajectory it took, rather than Oliver Cromwell. And that's many people may jump in and say I'm defending him. I'm not defending him. I'm not defending his actions. I'm not defending his character. I'm merely stating that if you're going to hold people to account for what they've done, that's fine. But he's often held to account for things he didn't do. He did play a big role. He was the Lord Protector. He was the chief of the army. He was the commanding officer. He was ultimately where the buck stops whenever you are, regardless of what happened, he's the very top. So it falls on his shoulders like any manager, officer, etc. Leader. And that's fine. That's fine if you're holding him in that regard. That you're saying, ultimately, regardless of with how much he actually had a role in those actions, that he ultimately it's his fault because he was the leader. Fine, but we know from the attitudes and the language used that it's built on ignorance, really. That actually he wasn't the one that caused some of the things he's accused for. I don't like to say, I'm not here saying that he's he's innocent in all this. I'm just I don't think anyone. Oh no, there is. I don't think anyone would try to defend him. Yeah, there is actually an author, amateur historian, a very good work actually. It's worth reading. Called I can't remember his first name, but it's O'Reilly, and he kind of does defend Cromwell. I wouldn't. I like some of his stuff. It's interesting. It definitely sparks a bit of a conversation around him, but I think that full out defending him is a bit. No, Queen Victoria did more to Ireland, harm to Ireland. Again, I don't. I do know what. If ever there was someone I'm going to say that deserves the hatred, and again, it's a bit silly to hate on dead people long gone for actions long near forgotten. In the sense of like we don't know everything that happened, is Queen Elizabeth I. She did far more against Ireland and Irish culture than Cromwell, Queen Victoria, or Churchill, as I just saw there as well. Although, yeah, Amy Pupsy, thank you very much. Shannon Wright, thank you very much for the gifts. I really do appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, he goes across to Ireland basically. He's saying that he's going to go across to Ireland for. Hang on. No, hang on. The biggest revenge in Ireland was getting Richard Harris to play Oliver Cromwell. Indeed. He's charged with, he's offered the position to lead the army to go across there. And Parliament sort of states that the reasons they're doing this is to establish English rule, deny Charles the First a launch pad in England, defending the survivors of Irish Catholics and the massacres of Protestant settlers, and they obviously ignore the retaliatory massacres and executions of royalist prisoners of war. But of course, Cromwell was charged with only avenging the massacres of English and Scottish settlers. But they didn't have the money, and this is what you were saying, if you don't have to pay for. So in the winter, the Long Parliament came up with a solution. It would borrow about £1 million against the security of 2.5 million acres, or about 25% of Catholic land in Ireland, and this was to be confiscated from rebels to fund the army of reconquest of Ireland, and it was known as the Adventures Act. And there were about 1,500 investors, and a large body of them were venture capitalists and committed Puritans, so including actually over 100 MPs. And believe it or not, Oliver Cromwell was one of the quite an aggressive investor. He actually put up £600 of his own money, and this is at a time. So that was basically 2 years' wages for Cromwell. To For land. I think his lands that he got were in Down, County Down. And then we have the likes of Sir William Barriston. He was a Cheshire Puritan, and he's investing on behalf of like a syndicate of ministers and minor gentry. Here you go. Actually, I did read. He got 1,257 acres in County Offaly. So there you go. That's Cromwell got from his investment. So it wasn't just for religiousness or right to rule and all that. There was also money involved too. So yeah, he leads an army of about 30,000 men, and this army was it grew to about 30,000 men, and this is this is the largest the new model army has ever been. It's the biggest it's ever been. But Cromwell's war in Ireland was effectively a war of sieges, and his policy was actually quite straightforward. It was to arrive at a town and offer basically a stark choice. He would offer quite generous terms. Again, for the time period, they are generous terms. He's offering terms that are not being offered in mainland Europe, are not being offered in anywhere else in Europe at the time. So he's offering them terms, and if they're accepted, he ensures they're honoured, and if they're refused, there would be no quarter. But this he never actually even goes through with that. It says, but he just kind of goes for the lives of everyone will be at his own mercy. But he actually has a record. He normally would grant mercy to civilians, except those in arms would be killed or sent into indentured labourers and servants to the Caribbean islands. So, so like I say, this is another reason why he's sort of a bit of ahead of his time in his attitudes. This still barbaric, whatever, but he's still more forward thinking than many of his contemporaries. I can skip that page actually. I don't want to spend all the evening on this. I will put all this into a video. So the Confederacy under Ormond, no. Oh yeah. So he was a very tit for tat in any Irish. The Irish were to be treated as the English. So prisoners of war would be treated as if English prisoners of war. But those who engaged in massacres and previous rebellions could expect no mercy. But others who treated no differently from English royalists. So the Irish prisoners of war were not treated any more harshly than the English were at that time period. And we also, as we've already said, he already respects Cavaliers, English Cavaliers, or just Cavaliers in general, over Scottish and then over the Irish. So he's treating the lower tier people who he views as just as well as his rivals. So, were there English royalists sent to the Caribbean? That is a good question, because when you look at and I wonder if we would break into the whole identity thing. You know, whether English royalists, Old English, you know, whether they can constitute as being Irish. Um, we fought you for 800 years, so fine. Ah, Black and Tans, Dave Bree, yeah, good old Wolf Tones. Um, I mean, that's wrong, that statement, but, you know, I haven't. I've listened to them a few times on the drink in my past. So, so yeah. But if you're saying like just out and out English, you know, like if we're just an English, so we obviously know if the towns of Drogheda had quite a few English in it, and their commander was English at the time. In fact, most of the people killed in Drogheda were English. They weren't even native Irish, and native is a loose term, but. So yeah, were they sent? I don't actually know. And again, I guess that it's kind of hard to read through who is considered a native and what you would consider a native. Um, in the sense of someone who's been here 1,000 years, 200 years, a day. Um, but it's an interesting question that I would actually probably wouldn't mind digging into. And when I do Oliver Cromwell's video, um, I'll try and hopefully have some more information on that. So yeah, so I was saying about like those who engaged in massacres from previous rebellion would expect no mercy, but others would be treated differently, no differently from English royalists, subject to similar rules, or having their assets and land seized. Merciful consideration would be withheld only for the leading people of the rebellion. They were to be penalised, but not the same as they were to be penalised, but not destroyed. Um, there were those in the English Parliament who favoured a more ruthless policy, and this is my argument when I'm coming up for like defending Cromwell, inverted commas. I'm not defending him. Thank you, Hannah Wynne. Thank you very much for the gifts. I really do appreciate that. It's actually the English Parliament who favoured more ruthless policies, under which all landowners and perhaps all Catholic landowners were to be transported and herded into special reserves. Originally, it was planned for like the south of Ireland, but it was moved to Connacht. And this extreme policy was only partially realised, as it's noted that the Catholics who raised arms would lose their lands, more land than their Protestant allies. So, effectively, what happened was the English Parliament wanted all out genocidal attitude. They were, you know, and the Irish were to be pushed, all their lands confiscated and pushed into the south. But due to political manoeuvrings and more sane-minded people, they pushed it for Connacht. And although Catholics would lose most of their lands and more lands than their contemporaries who are rebelling, you know, their allies, Protestant allies. They're still obviously not being exterminated. And believe it or not, Cromwell fought against these policies. He didn't want the extreme policies of basically these genocidal policies that they were originally being put forward by the English Parliament. You know, but I guess Drogheda's the first nail in attitudes towards Cromwell. The siege of Drogheda, the civilian death toll estimates remain actually contestable, and you know Cromwell's actions undoubtedly killed thousands and adversely impacted countless more. His arrival in Ireland, but it's not clear if his actions, which occurred in the midst of war, like I said, departed from and exceeded the accepted laws, practices, and norms of the day. Drogheda had actually seen a lot of fighting over that decade leading up to Cromwell's arrival. And it was traditionally an Anglo-Irish Protestant town within the Pale. It was actually first seized in 1601 by O'Neill, but they failed to take it. And then in 1649, Lord Inchiquin takes Drogheda from the Parliamentarian forces. Um, uh, he lets the surviving forces go, and they join Cromwell in Dublin. Cromwell obviously brings the largest train of siege artillery ever seen in Ireland, one which outnumbered Drogheda's garrison about 5 to 1. His forces of 12,000 troops and nearly 4,000 horse consisted of 8 infantry regiments, 6 cavalry regiments, as well as 11 siege guns, which obviously, like I said, far outmatched the Royalist forces. And this is Sir Arthur Ashton is the commander, or the governor of Drogheda at the time, who's actually an English fella. Hang on. So that's a weird way to look at it. I mean, it's true that the Gaelic Irish are. I'm not looking at it like that. I'm just saying that there are people who do, which makes blurs the lines of when you're trying to. So many people refer to the Anglo-Irish. Well, are they Irish? Are they Anglo-Irish? Are they English? You know, because some of them would have certainly considered themselves English because they were living in the Pale, which is ruled by England. Well, the whole island's ruled by England by this stage, so you know they're quite within their rights to call themselves English. But at the same time, they're being viewed as Irish by themselves, or they're being viewed as Irish by others, looking inwards on Ireland. So again, when you have this sort of mismatch of identities, how do you say how many English went to the Caribbean, or English royalists were sent to the Caribbean, if an Anglo-Irishman is referring to himself as English? You know, does he constitute as an Englishman being sent to the Caribbean, or is he part of the Irish being sent? You know, especially since his descendants probably refer to him as Irish. You know, Burkes and your Fitzgeralds and your Shorthalls and your Foxhalls. You know, all these sort of names. So it's just something that I would have to. It's not something that I'm particularly just. I'm saying is my view. I'm just saying it's just something I would have to put in consideration when coming up with the answer for that. I hope that clears that up a bit for you, Fionn. Or if anything, the waffling just made it more awkward. Yeah, so yeah, the siege of Drogheda, like I say, the first sort of mention of it we get it is like when William Lentil is speaking to the Parliament of England, and he states that our men are getting up to them, were ordered by me to put them to the so Cromwell states, our men were getting up to them, were ordered by me to put them all to the sword, and indeed being in the heat of action, I forbade them to spare any that were in arms in the town, and I think that night they put to the sword about 2,000 men. Soldiers fled into other parts of town, where about 100 of the forces possessed St. Peter's Church steeple, some of the West Gate, and others a strong round tower next to the gate called St. Sunday's. These being summoned to yield to mercy refused, whereupon I ordered the steeple of St. Peter's Church to be fired. And in a later letter, Cromwell admits that many inhabitants died. But again, his actions are, he's stating that he forbid to spare any who bore arms, and all his actions are speaking about military actions within the town. And when he says many inhabitants died, he's not saying he killed them or his forces killed them. Again, it's a siege. Many inhabitants will die. So it's that he's not admitting guilt or saying any of his actions apart from the siege itself. But he's in war. It's unfair to say that's the if he hadn't sieged the castle, well, if we hadn't rebelled, so tit for tat. Cromwell's council of war gave the total of loss of life about as 3,552, of whom 2,800 were soldiers, meaning that between 700 and 800 inhabitants were killed. and that is the debate whether or not these 800 were non-combatants. That is raised within Drogheda and historians. This 800 people, this 800 number is the number that. So again, I just want to reiterate. Actually, when you speak to a lot of people in Drogheda, they will say, "Oh, 3,552 people were killed, massacred," or it wasn't. 2,800 of them were soldiers. So they were, you know, they're meant to die in war. I suppose is the weird way of saying it. But most people say, although many events during that battle can be seen as excessive, they killed 5 priests, and there is records of them killing soldiers who had surrendered. So there are, perfect examples of barbarous acts happening, but these are not happening under the order of Cromwell. And he does say that the troops do get a bit carried away. So is this an admission of guilt, of a mission of not being able to control his army? Many reports of the civilian murders were mostly reported by royalists or Catholics. So at the time, all the sources we have for the massacred civilian populace are coming from royalist or Catholic sources. And like I say, if we're willing to say that the pamphlets and the misinformation of the massacres that led up to some of the actions of Cromwell, so coming to Ireland, so the massacres of Portadown and all these other massacres, if we're saying that, they came from disreputable sources, they're coming from English and Scotland planters who are fleeing to Dublin, London, and they're just wanting English support, so they're spreading lies and misinformation. Well, surely if we're going to hold that sort of skepticism, we need to hold it for these sources too when it comes to the massacre of Drogheda. Or we can just say that the massacres were happening in Ulster against Scottish and English and Scottish planters, and that the English came across and massacred Drogheda. So I think it's just something, we should apply the same skepticism when it comes to these pieces, and accept that they could be propagandist. But we do know the massacring of surrendered troops and officers and clergy in that was actually seen to be sending a message. Again, we could go into Wexford, which basically has the same sort of outliers. It's basically the same story, copy and paste. People died because they were fleeing, but I just wanted to sort of do a wee bit on Cromwell, and I've ended up doing over an hour on him, so I won't go over it. It's just, I hope it's food for thought for anyone who maybe had this idea of him being the be all and end all bad guy. And I'm not saying he was a good guy, I must reiterate that, but I'm just saying there are actually more, especially within the English Parliament at the time, that deserve more critical analysis by anyone who's interested in Irish history, anyone of Irish descent who may for some reason want to hate someone from the 17th century. Maybe look at someone in the English Parliament. Drogheda was like Portadown, biased accounts. Yeah, again, it's coming from, none of our sources for either one is coming from the other side. They're all coming from people who are politically motivated. And again, and they're all based on a grain of truth too, that we do see actions that are happening around it that justify what is being said, but they don't, at the same time, they're coming from, it's a bit like whenever you hear the Romans speak of the Gauls or the Britons, or the Germans, or the Christian missionaries speak of pagan religions have gone by, and we have to accept that these people they have their agendas, their point of views. So I think we'll put it into the surnames. I do owe us. I hope. Oh, thank you very much, Jordan, for the gifts. Aubrey, Hunsaker, Aries. Thank you very much for the gifts. Yeah. So that was just a wee bit of Oliver Cromwell. Why not? Because I'm going to do a video on him eventually anyway. That sort of just breaks it down a wee bit better. I just thought I'd just share with you what I've learned over my time about him, because whether you loathe him, love him, hate him, he's definitely an interesting character. Wow, Josh, 70 flaming hearts. Thank you very much. You don't have to gift. None of this is behind a paywall. And if you're if you want to support the channel, subscriptions, anyone who wants to, we're over halfway our subscription goal, and you get it's all free. You get a membership only lives once a month as well, just for the members and subscribers. So if you want to gift that way, that'd be brilliant. But like I say, this is all free. None of my information will ever be sort of hidden behind a paywall, and you don't have to gift, but I really do appreciate it. Yeah, I owed Martine, thank you. Amanda McCune, thank you. I owed one of my there we go. She wanted Hogan's. Okay, yeah. Hogan's are from well, I think there's a couple of branches, but Tipperary's the main one. If you're still here, Brico. So it's right on the so which wouldn't be too far off. Sort of, you've got the Kennedys, who are a related branch, the Dalcash, the O'Briens, who are obviously ruling Clare. So Tipperary's right next to it. I don't know how well you are aware of the geography of Ireland. But the Hogans are from Tipperary primarily, and I don't need to tell you how I know definitely where the Hogans from is, because I was a wrestling fan back in the day when I was a kid. Although I'm led to believe, I haven't followed him for many years, and I'm led to believe that's a good thing. But not very well. Thank you. Yeah, so actually, do I have what pictures is it you can see? Do I have a map of Ireland? Nope. Do you know what? Everyone who hates Cromwell. Whoa. There we go. I was going to do 9 Years' War. Here we go, right. Okay. So there you go. So Tipperary's here, and then Clare's just here. So, and there's there's a lot of families that are sort of Clare-related families here. So, yeah. So that's the Hogans, and thank you very much for the gifts. So I hope you can see that. I don't know if I actually didn't even check to see if you can actually see that or not. Hang on, let me get YouTube back up, because I was wow. Lots of writing in okay, I can hear you. Dunleavy, yeah, so okay, well, I was under the impression the Dunleavys are from Down. The Mac Dunleavys. It's never really it's Mac. I thought they were from Down. Am I going mad? Have I mistaken them from? I thought they were like around Leakale, Kilnarty up here. Am I going crazy? I may have mixed them up, but I was near certain they were from Down. So, right. Do you know what? I'm actually going to check that one. That's going to annoy me. I'll actually be up all night wondering, did I get that wrong? So, I'm going to cheat on this one, people. But I just want to know if anywhere says... I have a reliable source here. Nope. Well, none of these is helping. This is why I don't just type things into Google. Yeah, Fiona, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I was aware. I thought they were from there, but I could be mistaking them for another family. So, yeah. Witsky, welcome back. Can you do Malin as well, please? Yeah, of course. So Malins are actually from Tyrone. I believe there are a couple of unrelated lines, but the family I know of are typically associated with Tyrone, and they claim descent from the Kinloan. So I haven't researched whether that's fabricated or later addition to their family tree. But yeah, they're normally associated with there. But like I say, there are a couple of Malin comes from there's it can be translated from a number of Irish surnames that sort of get anglicised to Malin. Duran Duran forever. Duran Duran forever. Thanks very much. I won't sing Duran Duran. Yeah, I don't know. I only know the one or two songs. Yeah. So. Yeah, I hope that sort of, but I will try to. If you come to the live, the membership only live, you are a member, so Witsky. So, I'm gonna post up at the end of this month when the date is for the membership subscribers only live. It's the McDonald's and the one of the subscribers asked for the McDonald's, so they're getting a full history on the McDonald's and the begins with a B. Donegal family. B. Breslau, is it? I don't know. Breslin. So McDonald's and Breslin for the subscribers only live. Remind me if you do come along to it. I will put your name on the list and I will do the video for you there on the next membership. So, yeah. So that's, I don't know if anyone's interested, but that's what we do on the memberships is I give you a bit more information on your family, put you in the list, and you know. So thank you, will do. Yeah, I will put a post up at the end of the month. Giving it a hi, Lisa, Daza. Thank you very much. Welcome in. A little bit late tonight. Sorry. What was could you look at? No. I've already done this, Sullivan's. I've got a full video of them on YouTube. What was that? So let me see. Padraig, can you have a look at the possible connection between Mungi and O'Monaghy to Mongach through history? Yeah, I mean, the problem with, I think we sort of discussed this last time, was that there's a few unrelated lines, you know, like Mongian, which is, I think we said there was like 3 families, like Cork, Mayo and Fermanagh. You know, and then you obviously have the Mungi, which is found in Mayo. So, and these are all, not all of them, but effectively, yeah, they're all unrelated lines. So it's kind of hard to pin it down into one direct thing. But it is something that I am tracking, Patrick. I am, but there's obviously there's a lot of like names and stuff like that, and I have to make sure that my subscribers, my paid subscribers, are taking precedent. They are what keeps the channel going. So without them, I'd be one lost puppy. But I will, Patrick. I promise you that it is on my radar. Um, I'm a newbie from across the front. I'm starting to learn in-depth Irish history. I know McCarthy's are a big name, but I could have sworn you mentioned them at the beginning of the show. I did, but not really to do with what came afterwards. Someone had just asked me while I was loading up my maps and stuff, and my images about them. So there's actually lots of different branches of McCarthy. They're all related to McCarthy, who was ruler of Cashel in Munster, and they would eventually spread. Cormac McCarthy in the 13th century had a massive expansion into Munster, Desmond, and lots of the branches sort of come. So you have Carbery here, you'd have the McCarthy Carberys, the McCarthy Musgraves. So yeah, they descend from the Owenach de Cashel, who were a Confederate group, tribal group who pushed the Cork League group, who the O'Driscolls are the primary head family of that. They owned a lot of Munster, and then the Owenach grew and pushed them out and pushed them into a wee corner down in Bantry. So yeah, I just sort of mentioned them in sort of passion. The Owenach de Cashel. Aboriginal Irish Catholic. I guess you're Pebbles, Kenny. Thank you, Vonda. I guess you're. I don't know what was funny about it, but if you're laughing, that's great. Okay, so Maguire. Yeah, I've done the Maguires before. I mentioned them most nights. They're up in Fermanagh. I always recommend, if you get a chance, to go to Inniskillen Castle. They built it, and it's still in quite good condition for an Irish castle. And it's a military museum now. It's well worth a wee visit. The whole town's actually worth a wee visit. TikTok's telling me off because it likes to make sure that I haven't fallen asleep on live. Oh, hang on. Verification complete. Yeah. Massey, yeah. So there's quite a few Masseys. There's a multiple migration groups of Masseys. It comes across from England as well. There's a group from Ulster. There's a group down in Dublin, Limerick. You know, it's quite associated with quite a lot of English sort of areas. I don't know. Do I have a note or any Masseys here? If there's any. Yeah, I don't have anything on the Masseys. If there's any Irish lines, most people here will probably already know, but I take most of my sources of English variation or anglicised Irish names from Scoil na Gaeilge, DDSCU, and National Folklore Collection at UCD. So I only use their source, and their source has about 3,000 names that I've sort of semi-memorized. But I know some other sites claim to have 6,000 Irish surnames on there. So again, there could be Irish variation of it, and it's from one of those sites, and I haven't learned it. But I don't trust those sites as of yet. I'm very skeptical about using online sources that aren't peer reviewed, at least. And I think learning, 3,000 surnames ish is more than enough. I've only got a little head, or a big head on you. Oh, I'm Irish, a big head on me. There we go. Did that go? Did that go off for a second? I don't know. Toby, thank you very much for the rose again. I really do appreciate it. We lost what? Yes, McGuire, I've done them for mana in Enniskillen. Check out their castle. 697 is why. I don't know. I don't know what the reference is. My late father was a Burke, loved him very dearly, and wish I knew. Burkes came across from England, a wee place in Lincolnshire called De Burr, or Burr. They took the name from that. There's a De Burr Castle in Lincolnshire. They came across and they settled primarily in Galway, Connacht, Mayo. They would split into two branches primarily. You had the obviously the Galway Burkes and the Mayo Burkes, but then they would split into multiple, obviously, offsets. But these two families, although related, were in constant rivalry with each other because the Galway Burkes were quite English orientated. They tend to lean more towards the England, and the Mayo Burkes tended to be really heavily Gaelicized. So yeah, and obviously one of the three, I'd say, big families that had a huge impact coming into Ireland from outside of Ireland. They had probably one of the biggest impacts in Irish history. I've got a few videos on some. I've got the Battle of Killaloe, I think it is, which is mentions about the Burkes. Yes, I've been in Enniskillen. Yeah, it's Enniskillen Castle is lovely. The whole of Enniskillen is lovely. Do you know anything about the Ryans? I do, and there's like five Ryans. There's 5 unrelated Ryans, and they come from all over Tipperary, Connacht, Ulster. There's like 2 in Connacht, 2 in Ulster. Yeah, there's multiple unrelated families for Ryan. So it again, I suppose like any Irish surname, I have to kind of put that wee caveat in. There's very few that sort of have, 100% just one line. But yeah, so I suppose we'll just go through each one individually. So you obviously have the main, I suppose the main family, the one that's most people know, that are from Tipperary. They're probably the more famous family. And then next up you have another family from where is it? As if I've forgotten where Carlo is. Can anyone see it? It's somewhere around here. Maybe it's not on the map. Maybe that's why it is. Anyway, yeah, you've got another family from Carlo, just outside Kilkenny. Oh, here we go, up here. And they could be related to the Tipperary line. Yeah, so, and then you've got the ones that are related to the O'Kellys, and you've got the ones in Connacht, and like I said, you've got the ones in Ulster, so that's the Orions. Yeah. Oh, okay, apparently I got a text here. Apparently I've got to give a shout out to the Armstrongs. One of my friends is obviously in here, and I've missed his message. The Armstrongs, long-time rivals of the Leg Weeks. No, hashtag that joke. I don't. Oh yeah, there you go. Thanks very much, don't. Yeah. So yeah, the Armstrong Scottish family. They don't get a mention today. I'm not doing Scotland, but yeah, they're from the Border Reaver family. A lot of them came across Ireland in the 17th century with the plantations, and yeah, you know, great family. I've done Hogan Rocket. I've done Hogan. They're from Tipperary. Oh, hang on. Border Reaver in the chat. Yeah, I've got to be careful. Do you know where each O'Connor set comes from? I know there's 3. Yeah, so well, 3 of them are related. Sligo, Moore, Don. Sorry, O'Connor Don, O'Connor Sligo, and O'Connor. Yeah, but there's 3 here, right? There's 3. There's 3 there. I can't remember the third O'Connor. And then you've got the O'Connor Feelies, who are from sort of Kildare, Northern Kildare. And then you've got the O'Connor Kellys. And then you've got an O'Connor line up here in Ulster. So yeah, I know where the 6 O'Connor sets are from. Yeah, so O'Reillys are, I've done them quite a few times. Cavan. Eastern Cavan, I think they are. I always get mixed up with the East or West. O'Rourke's on the left, yeah. So Eastern Row, yes, O'Connor Row. Thank you, O'Connor Row. Yeah, just couldn't think of the nickname associated with them. Volume needs to go up on my end. It needs to go up on your end. What, you need to do the volume, or you need me to speak louder? The whisper seductively into the microphone. Can you hear that? Irish Medieval History. Philip at Irish Medieval History. Hope you're all following him. Can you put it up? Can I put it up? Can I put my phone? Bear with me 1 second, chat, while I figure out OBS's volume thing. It says I'm reaching all the way up to yellow. It's all the way up in volume. Maybe if I hold it. Is that any better? Maybe if I hold it. I have you on max volume. Well, maybe your headphones are broke. Don't be blaming me now. Your volume is absolutely fine. Thank you, Mrs. Ladykins. Thank you. I knew it was just them being awkward over on YouTube. They're so entitled over there. Okay. O'Halloran, I've covered them quite a few times. Clare and Ulster. They are primarily found along the borders of Clare. Made a lot of their money being the family that were toll collectors on a pilgrimage road, but quite a militaristic family too, being on the borders. YouTube viewers are the ascendancy. YouTube viewers will always be hold a very special place in my heart. But if they keep whinging, it won't be for much longer. Burn, yeah, there's I've done them quite a few times with a Ledwicklow, but there's quite a few unrelated branches, but the most famous lines. Burn, I have a full video of them on YouTube. Yeah, Gallagher, yeah, I've done them a few times too. Donegal, related to the Kennel Cornell. They're probably one of the most widespread surnames in Donegal. So they get about. Delaney, yeah. So it's primarily there's two origins for it, a Norman and an Irish sort of variation for it. They're mostly found around Tipperary and Kilkenny. But yeah, they're I believe there's an Irish version. I don't know if the So the Delaney's are a funny one because they've got an Irish translation of their name, and I don't know if that's a variation of their name being there is an Irish unrelated family, or whether they have been given an Irish version of their Norman name. Doherty's and McGee's, yeah, Inishowen, both found in Inishowen, both related to each other, and both related to the Kilmaconnell. So Inishowen is up here. That's the O'Doherty's and McGee's. I've done the O'Connors, 6 of them, 3 in Connacht, 1 in Ulster. I can't even remember where the last one is. I've totally forgotten. But Fairley, O'Connor Fairley Kildare. Already done them tonight though. Mawinny, Ulster. There's quite a few of them in Ulster, but they has multiple origins. One being coming across with the plantations, the other being a native Irish name. Roscommon on top. I actually prefer the O'Connor Kerrys, so they're my favourite O'Connors. I'm sorry to say. That's why they've got a short. You can always tell which ones are my favourite since they're the first videos I did. So O'Doherty's actually one of my favourite families in Irish history. But I'm not even related to them. That's just a funny thing. It's just I just like their history. I suppose the O'Neills, being my ancestral overlords, may hold a special place in my heart. You know, I suppose they have to. Duffy's found quite a lot of places, but a large concentration of them around Monaghan and Armagh. I'm actually related to that line of Duffy's too. Quinn, yeah. So Quinn's multiple. Again, it's one of those names that's got multiple origin points. A famous line is from Clare, who are descended from, I want to say, an uncle, someone quite closely related to Brian Boru. I'd have to rewatch my video on the Battle of Clontarf, the families who fought at the Battle of Clontarf. But there's quite a famous family in Clare. But there's also like an Ulster line. There's also a line that's unrelated. Probably, I think the more famous Quins are from Longford. That's probably the most famous line of Quins. Oh, my throat is getting dry. When you speak for 2 hours solid, does take it out of you. I won't be singing tomorrow. I won't be shouting at the kids, that's for sure. They probably want me to do more of these. So many names coming now. Meehan. Meehan's mostly found on the west coast. So I think there's a unrelated family in Connacht, and another line in Ulster and Donegal. McGuinness, mostly found the Ive, I believe, was McGuinness territory. They're in Down anyway. County Down is a McGuinness family. How about Knox? I don't know of any Irish translation of Knox. I know obviously of the Presbyterian minister Knox, who came across and settled in Donegal. I believe he had family there. Bonnie, thank you very much for those ice creams. Adele Callis, Danny Burlow, Adele Callis again, Tom Donnelly, thank you very much for those. Those gifts. You don't have to gift, but I really do appreciate it. Philip, you missed the whole talk on Cromwell. Flanagan's a Roscommon. Oh no, they're related to the Roscommons. I believe actually Flanagans are down here in Galway, in Iarchonach. Yeah, so Flanagans. I think they were quite a maritime family as well. Um, so they were often probably bumping shoulders with the um, O'Malley's, O'Driscolls, McDonough's. Gento, thanks very much for those. Mole, thank you very much. Did I say thank you, Danny? Sharky, thank you very much for those gifts. Really appreciate that. Beth Nolan, I don't know if I already thanked you, but I'll thank you again. Thank you for following Forever Healing. I'll hopefully get a video out for them soon enough. Let's see what Philip's saying. Ross comment on top. As long as the Shannon flows, there will be no. As long as the Shannon flows, there will be no Carrie O'Connors to become High King. I mean, they don't have the right to be High King anyway. They claim descent from Keir, of the Keir Lucra, who really are only based here. I mean, I suppose they claim ancient links to Fergus of Ulster, but that's not really historical. Well, I mean, it could be, but it's outside of my time period. County Mayor's where my dad's from. Yeah, so it makes sense that the family stayed within the area. Most families have stayed pretty well within their sort of traditional areas, not really expanding too far. Too far from their traditional lands. Daly. Daly has a few unrelated lines. I think there's one in Donegal, who are a branch of the O'Donnells apparently. And then I don't know if the ones in Connacht are related to them, or if they came later. But there's O'Daly's in Connacht too. So yeah. But O'Daly's tend to come from, well, the branch I know of tends to come from Donegal. I was joking, I love all the O'Connors and O'Briens. Yeah, I mean, I love them as much as I can love families from the south. We all know Ulster's where it's at. Our Ulster clans are the best clans. Yes, I'm willing to fight anyone for it. Suddenly 4,000 people unsubscribe. No, I'm a big fan of Brian Brew. Anything on the O'Donohues? I know the O'Donohues of Kerry. They are the O'Donoghus. And I think they're from the Owenach de Lochleen, who were a branch of the family that for a time owned most of this. They were overlords of the Keir Lucra before the Keir Lucra, so the O'Connor Kerrys sort of pushed them out, along with the helps of like the Corker Davina, who were the O'Sheas, the O'Falveys, and the O'Connells, and their powers weakened as well by the encroachment of their kin, the Owenachtar. So, yeah, so that's that. Right, I'm going to have to. It's after 12 now. Doherty, I've done them. They're from. There's Doherty and Doherty, and Doherty and Clare, and Doherty and Clare, and Doherty and Inishowen. No, you're very welcome, Hannah. Hope to see you on the membership only live. I'll be posting soon at the end of the month the dates for that. So I'm gonna have to end it here, and it's after 12 and I'm losing my voice and I need to save it for tomorrow, so hopefully I will see you all again tomorrow. So until then, thanks very much for Ruby Moon. Thank you, Hannah, for the gifts, and I will speak to you soon. Slán. Is McConnell an Ulster clan? There is McConnells in Ulster. I think they actually come across more with the plantations. But yeah, the McConnells down here in Kerry who are another unrelated family. So, but thanks very much, guys, on YouTube. Really appreciate the comments and chat. And if I didn't get to you, I'll hopefully get to you soon on the next one. But I really do need to end now because my voice is going. So I will speak to you soon. But thanks very much for all the love and support and questions. And now I'm off to get a warm coffee. Right, take care, guys. Bye bye.